Good afternoon. I'm really glad to be here this afternoon to be part of the kickoff and celebration for two major events that are going on within the city organization. And we have a number of people here today to share that with us, not only city staff, but I know there's probably representatives in the room from several local colleges and universities and from private business that are here to be part of this. I think that's really important because as we move forward, I think all of us in the room realize how important partnerships are. And I think this is very symbolic of that. There's been a lot of partnership and teamwork that has gone into the work that has brought us here to this point today. First off, starting with our fine staff in information technology and business support services, particularly in terms of new leadership that we've brought in over the last couple of years in the form of Susan Johnson and Guy Cavallo. And with their leadership and with the support of all the people in this room and the people that you represent, we've got to the point that we have developed a strategic plan for information technology for the city of Charlotte, which has dramatic ramifications for all the people that we do business with, and most importantly, for the community and the citizens that we as city government employees serve every day. I think there's lots of themes this afternoon that we could probably talk about, but I'm just here to do the welcoming to get us to this point and move us along in the program. But I think what we're doing today in terms of celebrating the start of a new network infrastructure rebuild, as we say, and the advanced computer technology lab are symbolic of a new era in technology for city government. We'll be concentrating on productivity. It ties into our competition efforts with the private sector, and again, back to that theme of partnerships. With that, what I would like to do is introduce Guy Cavallo, who is going to give us an outline of this afternoon. I'm really excited to hear our guest speakers this afternoon, and again, hearing a private sector approach in the world of technology and how we all can learn from that and how we can better serve the community as we do that. So again, I'm really glad to see all of you here this afternoon. I think we're all going to sit back and listen and learn and interact with the panel a little later on. And then of course, one of the culmination points of this afternoon is to have the grand opening of the technology lab. With that, I'd like to introduce Guy Cavallo, who is the head of information technology, and we'll proceed with the afternoon. Thank you.
Oh, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming today. It's an exciting time in the technology world. If you haven't been watching it and you didn't look yesterday, you missed something already. It is just a tremendous time of change for all of us, and Charlotte is right in the middle of it. What we're going to do today is show you how we're accomplishing some of those changes, let you have an idea that this isn't just a couple of people in a closet that are figuring out how to do this all by themselves. As Julie mentioned, that we have built some partnerships. We've had some very good industry leaders here today to help you show you what type of partnerships we've built, and that expertise and experience, especially in the days of competition. IT can't afford to hire 200 people and have them here full-time at that cost to the city. What we need to do is hire expertise that helps us do specific things and then go back and lower our cost of delivering those services. So we got a full afternoon planned for you, and I appreciate your coming. Let's see. Can we kill the lights up there? If you can't see that, one of the things, there we go. First of all, as far as enhancing IT services, in the last year we've made some tremendous changes in IT that were directly driven by the business needs of the key business units. The first thing that we've done is we've hired new staff and contractors to supplement the skill set that we had. That doesn't mean that the staff that was there wasn't doing a job, because we've also made a tremendous investment in getting new skills of the current staff, and we've invested heavily in training over the last year. It's only going to benefit us all on a project like this. We've also created several new offices that are now in operation and staffed. One is an office for information development. One thing in the technology world, It used to be called documentation. In the old days, these were the people that would write a manual, usually about 3 months after you needed it when you built something new and the users were starting to use it, but they didn't have anything to look at yet. Well, with information development, we have an office that specializes in delivering multimedia training, online training, so that when you implement a new system, not only do you have it at the time that it's delivered, but it's available to you in a variety of formats. We've also instituted an Office of Business Process Reengineering. Again, that's a long phrase. What does that mean? One thing that we've seen is that there's so much change going on now that before you go out and buy computers or buy software to solve your problems, you really need to figure out what you want to do first. And it seems like that would be a common sense rule, but a lot of times it's missed. And what we've done is created an office that can work with any of the key businesses to help you figure out what's the business process that you're trying to accomplish. I've specifically tasked that office with, do not worry about a computer solution. The computer solution, the results of that office might come up and say, hey, you're doing this in a manual paper-based method. That's the best way you can do it. There's no computer system that can provide what you want to do. And again, that's a function that's brand new to IT as a service to the city, but it's one that we saw our customers really, really needed. Because when you get some of the sales pitches for new software that will solve all problems, I don't think we'd all be here today if all the software solved all the problems that have been solved over time. You really need to know what we want to do first, and the Business Process Reengineering Office will do that. We've also created an Office of New Oracle Development to help build new systems. One of our major year 2000 efforts is to rebuild a customer service system for the city, combining a number of separate systems that now will go across the city versus independent ones. Again, that's a new office that wasn't there. Expanding services, we've also brought in help. In case you haven't realized it, for the last month and a half, if you called the IT help desk, before you used to, after 5 or 6 o'clock, you wouldn't get an answer. Now you can call at 3 o'clock in the morning and you'll get an answer, and you'll get an answer from an expert on the software that you're calling, because we've partnered with Stream Technologies to provide 5,000 extra hands to our help desk whenever we need them. Again, it's a service that we feel people are working longer and longer hours as part of their government service. I can't keep staff around enough to be able to cover every hour that somebody's going to work, weekends, whatever. But now we have a technology service backing us up so that you can get help when we're not there. The next item I want to talk about is the infrastructure rebuild. Again, I get a lot of questions about this. Why are we doing it? What is it? Since we're in NASCAR land, I wanted to use a little summary. What we're really doing, it's a lot like redesigning a car engine. Everybody wants it to be faster, cheaper, use less gas, and cause less pollution in the environment. If we had tasked one of the NASCAR teams with doing that, they wouldn't bring out the pieces one at a time and then show them to you, because until the engine's complete, you really can't see the results. One thing that we're doing today is we're announcing that the engine is now becoming complete. We're ready to start some test runs. We're starting to rebuild that infrastructure. It simply had to be done. The infrastructure that Charlotte had would not support today's systems. And one of the things we're going to see a little bit later in the show is a video feed through the new infrastructure. Again, these are things that we want to offer more and more, various ways of getting information to the desktops. And again, we're going through a major rebuild in this building. We've already knocked off 3 floors over the last 30 days. Again, these are building the foundation blocks of what we all need to be able to use technology, not just today, but next year, 5 years from now. Another little thing that we're working on in IT is called the Year 2K project. Many of you already are experiencing U2K problems, and you may not have realized it already. How many of you right now have a VCR at home that's flashing 12 o'clock? That's a Year 2K problem. That's what happens when a system doesn't have the information that it needs, or it can't process it. And again, for all those flashing VCRs out there that are saying it's 12 o'clock, you know that if you tell them to record a program at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's not going to do it because its reference point is missing. And that's what the Year 2K problem is. We have a major effort going on that, on resolving the city systems, and part of our infrastructure rebuild is to resolve that. It might be hard for those of you outside of technology to believe it, but the technology industry, even as late as last year, has been selling hardware and software that was not Year 2K compliant, that in effect would no longer function in less than 18 months. As part of our Year 2K solution, we're replacing the entire infrastructure, all the communication, all access points to resolve any Year 2K issues. So the infrastructure rebuild is also part of the Year 2K issue. And I want to take a minute and describe how we're going about doing this. With this explosion of technology and rapid changes in the business world, IT must continually reinvent ourselves to deliver the services that the key businesses need. When we start with our core staff, again, we've hired additional staff, we've brought on contractors, we've brought on partners, we've retrained current staff, and we have a very vigorous training program going on. What we're doing is actually expanding that expertise, again, through bringing in additional people and also giving the current people the skill sets that they need through intensive training. There are several core services that we provide on top of that are citywide needs, very strong citywide needs. Projects like the infrastructure rebuild and projects like the Year 2K. For KBE to take those on independently, the chances of succeeding in the time frame are very small. What IT is providing in those projects are project management, expertise in project planning, design, validation. You're going to see us go through lots of testing, and these are services that we're using now and bringing on board now, and they're not going to go away after Year 2K. These are services that IT will offer the rest of the city. If a key business wants to buy a new database system, they don't have to use IT at all to do it, or they could use IT to validate the design, to test the design. They could hire IT to build it. We're going to offer that whole broad range of services, but again, those are things that before IT was either you build it with IT or you did everything outside. What you're going to see from us is a smorgasbord of technology services that match the customer's needs. But even with doing all that, you have to wonder, how can an organization as small as IT is, and we have 48 employees, when we're all staffed, and like the rest of the world, we never have all of them staffed. There's about a 20% vacancy rate worldwide, or at least in the U.S. for technology. How can we do all that with a small group of people? Well, what you're seeing here is that we've brought in a lot of help. That's the only way that we can take on a project this size. It would be impossible to do this with in-house staff. The number of players, the amount of expertise that you need to rebuild an infrastructure, and to test out new technology before you make it a citywide decision. We've brought in a number of experts in certain areas to help us rebuild the infrastructure. And again, we've been working with them independently, with some of the KBEs, depending on the need, over the last year to develop the right model that will fit Charlotte, not just for this year, but also for the next 10 years. Now, we have two of our major players today, Microsoft, who's definitely the world's largest software vendor and a key player in our software market, and Compaq, who is basically owns the network server market, and all of the network servers in the city are going to be based on Compaq. We have both representatives are here today, and we'll fill you in on their view of technology and how it impacts not just us, but the rest of society. In addition to those two players, I want to take a minute and identify some of the other players that are helping us do the infrastructure. Again, a day-to-day end user in the city may or may not have contact with these, but I want you to realize, again, this wasn't a couple of people in IT that went off in a closet and figured out how to do this. We got a lot of help. We have MITRE, who's out of Washington, D.C. They are a network design and management specialist firm. We send them information about, here's the type of things that we want to run in the city, and they tell us, based on their analysis tools, what pieces can go where, how we can impact them, what will work better. We also have two major players in the wiring market, Lucent Technologies, which again is a Bell Labs offshoot, and NCT are currently rewiring the city with us. And again, we're putting in wire that has a 20-year guarantee for technology in it. So it'll be a long time before IT has to come back and request funds to rebuild the infrastructure again. We also have two Year 2K vendors. CACI and Keene are both here working to help us resolve the Year 2K issue with the projects that the city has identified. Again, we could not do that with in-house staff alone. We've needed a lot of help to do that, and we've got two very good players there. Ganymede software firm, which is a small North Carolina firm, has a very interesting product called Chariot. And what it allows us to do is test the impact of our performance when we make a change to the network from an end user perspective. Again, we could show you a whole bunch of technology graphs that would show you that we could prove to you that the network's better today than it was yesterday. But when you go back to your desktop, if you think it takes you longer to get email today than it did yesterday, you think that it's wrong. What this product does is it allows us to do testing from that perspective versus just a technology graph. And again, if you come up to our lab, you'll get to see that in operation. It's a very, very neat product. Again, it's a small North Carolina company that has taken the industry by storm. We also have two major players at the desktop arena, Dell and Gateway Computers. Again, the city has tended to buy from those vendors. Again, they're both very strong leaders in the area, and the technology is going to continue to evolve. Again, we're going to see people wanting to get 400 megahertz machines, 800 megahertz machines, 1200 megahertz machines, and that path is just going to keep coming. I still haven't seen anybody out-type a 400 megahertz Pentium machine yet, so I'm not sure why they need to jump to the 800 megahertz one. But as soon as it's out, we'll have a bunch of people that say they absolutely need to have that to do their job. Now the problem is that machine will cost just as much as the one 2 years ago cost, so it's hard not to give it to them. But again, that's something that will be a key part of that. But the main thing I wanted to show in this slide is that, again, IT has a lot of help in rebuilding this infrastructure. And again, these are experts that we've brought in pieces. We've used their expertise. We're not paying them for 40 hours a week to be here, because otherwise I couldn't help rebuild the infrastructure with the amount of money that we have. We use the expertise and get a transfer of knowledge so that our staff can continue to use these tools after the vendors are gone. And that's what's going on now. And like I said, we're very proud of bringing in that many players in just the last 12 months to pull this together. Now, my next thing I want to do and have the pleasure of doing is introducing Bob McDowell, who's going to give us an overview of his view of what's going on in the world. Again, we have two very distinguished speakers here. Bob will be the first one. I had the pleasure of meeting Bob last March when Microsoft held their first executive summit for state and local government. When I got there, I thought I'd meet people from Virginia, North Carolina, New York, whatever. I didn't realize they also invited the rest of the world, so we had people who had been on planes for 24 hours coming to Redmond to meet with us. And we had two great days of discussions with them. And during that presentation, I cornered Bob and said, please, if you can, I want you to come to Charlotte and see what we're doing, and he graciously accepted. It was funny, and it shows you the way the technology has grown. I had already known of Bob McDowell through Microsoft's website because he published a number of white papers and statements about business technology. And again, that's something, before I would have had to go to the library, check out a book. Bob would have had to write the book for it to be there. And I thought he was an interesting guy, but again, since it was through the internet, I had no idea. Was this somebody that was another Bill Gates? Was he somebody who looks a lot younger than the rest of us do? And it was quite a pleasant surprise to actually get to meet the person behind the scenes when we got out there. And one thing I want to let you know about Bob is that he joined Microsoft back in the early 90s, and he established the Microsoft Consulting Services side of Microsoft. Again, up until that point, it really was purely a software vendor, and the customers were screaming, we want to buy your stuff, but we need help. And Bob was tasked with, okay, figure out how to help people and how to make it profitable for Microsoft. And I really think Bob is a very good example of the leadership that Bill Gates gives to Microsoft, and that he is not a Bill Gates clone. He has a totally different type of background than Bill Gates has. And again, Bill is really a software visionary of our times, but he does not have the experience in day-to-day business environment, because as soon as he could, he went and built Microsoft instead of working at a Fortune 500 organization for 5 years or 10 years and get that experience. And again, I think Him bringing people like Bob into Microsoft senior management circle showed that he's willing to bring in people that aren't just clones of himself and are willing to bring other experiences to the table. And again, we're very happy to have Bob here, and I would like to introduce Bob McDowell.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be with you this afternoon. And in the next 40 minutes or so, I want to take you through a discussion that really tries to come at this general topic of technology from three perspectives. First, I want to talk just a little bit about Microsoft, not so much a pitch on Microsoft, but more as it relates to a reflection of the industry that we're in. And in fact, touch on some points that may surprise you in terms of how important a customer like the municipality of Charlotte or large business enterprises are to our company at this stage, because a dramatic shift has occurred in our business, and I think there are still some misperceptions about who we are as a company. Hopefully I can clarify a few of them. The heart of the talk, though, I want to focus on what we're beginning to learn from customers, both private and government sector, as it relates to how organizations are beginning to harness this so-called digital revolution. And I'm going to try to stick very carefully to some real data, some examples of what companies are doing, where they're measuring value, some of the things we think we're beginning to learn in terms of differentiating those organizations that are more successful than others, and hopefully in a way that may be useful to you as well. And finally, I'm going to close with a couple of comments on where we see it going. We're spending a lot of money, as you'll see in a minute, on just research and development. We're clearly a major player in our industry. How this industry evolves and how it impacts our customers is key to determining our own success. So I thought I'd leave you with just a couple of, at least our views on where we think some of this is going, and hopefully in relation to what you're thinking about yourself. I also don't want to close without making some specific comments on Charlotte as an area, because I think, as most of you know, this is becoming a big Microsoft location, and I think we have a unique opportunity here to partner as compared to many other areas. I have been with the company for quite a while, at least in Microsoft time. 9 years is a relatively long period of time, and it has been interesting to watch the company evolve. And as I implied earlier, there are, in my view, many misperceptions about Microsoft that appear to be held by some of our competitors and even certain government agencies. And one of them, of course, which is a little disconcerting, is if you read some of the press today, you might actually believe that Microsoft's goal has all along been world dominance. Now, I hope most of you have gotten to know us and know us as the loving and kind company that we really are, and realize that our strategy, of course, has never been to dominate the world, but to save it. So hopefully you're seeing that in how we're working with you. In terms of saving the world, Microsoft has been a very fortunate company. Our revenues for the financial year we closed out in June, about $14.5 billion worldwide. 9 years ago when I joined, it was $804 million worldwide. At my annual review with Jeff Rakes and Steve Ballmer, I try to draw a direct relationship between my time there and that revenue stream, but I've never been able to totally sell that. But more importantly is the focus of the business. If you look at 89, 90, we were a word processing company, but not the largest. We were a spreadsheet company, but not the largest. We didn't even have something called PowerPoint. We had no database product. We had an operating system that was barely Windows 3.0, nothing like NT. And most of the business sold to individual users in the home or through the consumer side of the house. If you fast forward to today, that $14.5 billion comes from a very different set of sources. Certainly, we've been fortunate enough to be successful in becoming a de facto standard on the desktops of most of our business and government customers, and certainly in the home as well. But the fastest growing business for Microsoft today is NT, the operating system upon which we are asking customers to consider essentially betting the whole farm. And while it is true we have a consumer business, we sell products through the retail chains, and that's a nice and important business for us, Of that $14.5 billion, over 70% of that revenue today comes from you, government and business. The largest customer of the Microsoft Corporation on the face of the earth is the United States Department of Defense. And the largest customer on the commercial side, or at least one of them historically, has been AT&T, the birthplace of Unix. Microsoft's success as a company going forward is in large part dependent on our ability to sell products to you that you will risk using in a business environment, and that you will find service and support from us that will be on a par with that you could get anywhere, because essentially you are betting your own organization on it. We're making a couple of unique investments I won't spend lots of time on, but Microsoft, we've been told by the federal government, is now, for all companies headquartered in the United States of America, the largest investor in research and development as a percentage of gross revenues. 6 or 7 years ago, that didn't even exist on our profit and loss statement. And we're doing that because we believe this environment is changing at such a rate, if we don't keep up with it, we're gonna die. We think it's that serious. And the speed with which this technology revolution is occurring is happening at a rate that, frankly, many of us couldn't have believed 3 or 4 years ago. And by the way, there's an opportunity there to share some of that R&D with customers like yourselves to help mitigate some of the risks associated with your own investments. We've taken a strategy around partnership that really fits the model that Guy described so well in terms of how he's working with partners in implementing the systems within the municipal government here. That is to say, while we want to be the platform and tools provider, we've reached out to partners like Compaq and many others on the hardware side, on the services side, and as well those that are building applications, solutions to business problems, helping them build those applications on our platforms, so that we can see a business that grows to the extent that you have a virtual Microsoft Corporation in terms of service and support and solutions that map our own core employee community, that we think, when it's counted in actual form, may be the largest computer entity on the face of the earth, that hopefully gives our customers wide ranges of choice on the kinds of solutions they need to install, and looking for the most cost-beneficial approach to installing it. Just a couple of comments on the technology momentum as it relates to Microsoft. NT as an operating system, as a product at least that you could buy today, is maybe 4.5 years old. It currently outsells the total of every variation of Unix on Earth by a ratio of 2.5 to 1. Over 5,000 different applications run on that platform today, and we've just formed a special business unit whose sole job is to find every software application on Earth and get it running on NT, so that when a customer looks for a solution, they'll see an alternative at least running on our platform along with others as well, and the customer will make the decision as to which one is the best business case. Messaging has become a critical infrastructure component of most organizations, and I'll share a couple of specific examples in the talk. Exchange obviously is the core of our focus there, and for the first time now, Exchange is outselling all other messaging systems that are new implementations in organizations around the world. And most of those Exchange implementations are in fact managed by one of the several partners of ours who have certified professionals to support it. Let me talk just a little bit in a more generic way about the PC model, the industry that we're in. The argument has been made for a while that traditional computer industry, which is represented by the mainframe and the mini computer, understand the high-end computing, and the personal computer industry understands the low end, and the two are coming toward each other to meet. And there is a lot of truth to that. But there are pieces of the PC business model which I think are in the end going to impact the whole industry and to the advantage of the customer. Because the PC industry has been built around the establishment of certain de facto standards that allow thousands of suppliers to comfortably build applications to that standard they can depend on, thus giving the customer base unbelievable choice, driving volume up to here and price down to there. And the real issue for the PC industry now is, can it, quote, scale up, unquote? Can those platforms, from a technical perspective, truly support, with all that you need in system management and system development, that you have grown to expect appropriately in the mainframe mini computer environment, where you find it in the so-called PC environment? And the product evolution will tell that, You'll in the end make judgments as customers. As well, the PC model says everybody participates in providing service and solutions to problems, which in the end opens up competition and gives customers choice there as well as controlling cost. We think that's the model that fueled our success to date. We think that's what's going to fuel the success of the computer industry going forward. What's driving this is unbelievable growth. The fastest growing market for the Microsoft Corporation. I spend 3 or 4 weeks a year down there, and I'm not in the Far East. It's South America. We're a little company, a PC company, headquartered in the state of Washington. Over 65% of our revenues come from outside the United States. The second fastest growing market on earth for us is still not the Far East. It's the Middle East. This industry, this take-up of technology is happening on a global scale, the likes of which I don't think the Industrial Revolution has seen before. And it has major potential impact on how we do business as a country, how we govern ourselves, and how we compete in the next 100 years. And technology is now serving as the catalyst for this occurring. The numbers are amazing. 90 million annually new Windows-capable machines hitting the market right now. And it seems, if anything, this continued growth curve is going to continue in that direction. You barely touched markets in the Far East, like mainland China, where the potential is obscene compared to what's being bought today. The upside, it appears to me, seems to be unreal. And mapping that with the internet web phenomenon is fueling growth the likes of which we've never seen before. Even the engagement of senior management in this discussion is happening in large part because of the internet. Because people are using that environment, seeing it easier to use even in their PC experience, and seeing it for the potential that it has, which is to literally turn upside down the business model upon which every industry in the world has operated since they were born. And I'll talk a little bit about what I mean by that specifically. Also, Moore's Law, co-founder of Intel, argued that, in fact argued 20 years ago, that he believed the processing industry would continue to increase performance to the extent that roughly every 24 months you'd see a doubling in performance at the same price as you saw 24 months before that. If anything, we think the phenomenon is accelerating. Andy Grove was in fact in Seattle recently speaking at the University of Washington to accept an award, and he said if anything, Moore's Law has to be readjusted from 24 months to 12 to 18. We're talking about less than $1,000 Pentium machines today out the door. There seems to be no end to this. One of the very interesting issues as I meet with our enterprise, government, and private sector customers is a concern that many of their employees are driving them, constantly pressuring them for new equipment. And the problem they've got is they come to work and see all the junk they've got to use compared to the first-class operation they got at home. In fact, look at it. Over the last Christmas season, if you were to buy a device for your children to use to play games on, and you bought something less than 6.4 gigs of hard disk, 128 megs of memory, high-resolution CRT, Pentium 2 machine, if you bought something less than that, and a neighbor saw you doing it, they'd turn you in for child abuse. I mean, it is really interesting what we've come to conclude is a basic machine. But no worry, because the hardware vendors are building all this capacity that'll last you for a long while. You've lost faith in us as the software industry then. If you don't believe, we're busily working away to build software to consume every ounce of that performance the day it's available to you. Now, all this is goodness in the sense of increased price performance, but one of the major challenges, and I bet you have it as well, when do I do what? Because I can't replace everything every year. And one of the things you ought to be looking to your suppliers for, whether it be hardware, software, or whatever, is some help in that regard, because the return on investment is an important issue here. But it's not going to slow down the momentum and the innovation that's occurring in our industry on the hardware and the software side. A couple of points here around issues that I think are very relevant to you. You've made a big infrastructure decision around Microsoft, and we very much appreciate it, particularly at the desktop and in the messaging arena. And you'll now make decisions as to how you roll that out. But one of the issues that we are trying to address very aggressively is the issue of scalability. If there's a question about how far we go, it's really can we scale all the way up, and frankly, all the way, I prefer to use the term out rather than down. And that is to say, have a common operating environment that lets you develop from one extreme to another. You'll make judgments over time as to how you think our product is evolving in that manner, whether it can or cannot do what you want. But lest there be any lack of clarity around where we're going, we believe there is absolutely no inherent limitation in the architecting of NT in terms of how far it can scale. And yes, we believe absolutely, while not today, within 2 years or so, with a straight face, I could tell you the platform is now capable of running applications running on any mainframe on Earth. The other end, however, is just as interesting to me. And this is a misperception example again. You've seen these handheld devices and the so-called Windows CE operating system, which is still part of the family, still uses the same development tools as the other platforms. And people are seeing this as kind of a toy, kind of a next Newton. Well, it's a lot more than that. And trust me, watch the next shoe to drop. My wife is a little concerned with me now because it has reached a point in my life where I cannot look at anything and not see a need for some variation of the Windows operating environment. She is concerned if I begin to look at people in the same way, she's leaving me. But if you think about what is a PC, almost anything, whether it's in a car, whether it's in your hand, whether it's a device on the shop floor moving gas from one point to another, almost all of that stuff historically proprietary operating systems. The opportunity to put a de facto standard on that platform that lets you leverage that investment from one extreme to the other has the potential for greatly enhancing how we use information, how we move it around, how we store it, and the cost effectiveness of building applications on it. The other issue is that I just blasted through, manageability. But here the real point is most environments will, for the foreseeable future, have multiple head-end devices that the user will use. And so what we've tried to do is focus on one of the big problems in the PC industry, and that is manageability. It's one thing to have individual desktop devices, but if you're going to manage it in the municipality of the government of Charlotte, or in a Bank of America, now Nations Bank, of course, here in, well, Bank of America, but not in San Francisco. That's the thing I got to get right. If you're going to manage it on that scale, you really have to worry about managing and distributing software in a much more efficient way than we have historically. It means offering you the option of the so-called thin client, that is a device that can display the application the same as a personal computer can, but less horsepower locally and presumably less expensive, but you make the decision on what the impact there is on communication costs. And even if you believe, I don't happen to, but some do, that the right thing is a PC but lock it down and not let users do what they want with it, which is an intriguing approach to personal computer. But nonetheless, if you believe that is something that ought to be done, you can even include that kind of device on a network. But the point is letting the end customer make the choice, ensuring the application looks and feels the same. Everyone is using the same messaging infrastructure, but you make the choice at the head end as to what the right device is for the right job, and if the job changes tomorrow, then you change the device. Someone back me up. Now I'll try to go forward. I seem to be on manual mode. Am I on manual mode? There we go. All right. A couple of points here related to something that you already have available to you in the city of Charlotte. One of the things Microsoft historically hasn't done as well as they should have is articulate the need for service and support. As easy as our stuff is trying to get to be, it is not easy enough yet. And I think for the foreseeable future, you're going to need some level of training and support. In fact, you ought to judge a supplier as to whether they provide some of that or not. And you have chosen to engage us using something called an enterprise program manager, which I'll describe in a minute. But essentially, it's resource on site, whether it's supporting product or transferring our knowledge and skills to you, so that when you make these kinds of infrastructure decisions, you get some help from us and from our partners to provide a full range of services to make sure that you can implement it successfully. And again, Guy describes the right model, because he says the objective here is not to have 40 hours from everybody on site with bodies all over from the outside. It's rather use it appropriately and judge us in part, not just on how well we deliver quality service, but how well we transfer our knowledge and skills so you become capable of supporting it yourself, because that's the end objective. You win in the end, we do as well. Part of that program is the Enterprise Program Manager, which is a service that you have engaged us with. That is an on-site resource that is there to transfer those skills and knowledge, to act as the interface to Microsoft, to get you access to software and services that maybe you wouldn't otherwise get as quickly. It's also someone who is to live there literally as part of your staff. He or she is measured on how well they leverage themselves in the organization, and hopefully how well you take advantage of the service. And it's a capability that I know Guy is using and capable of using to support any implementations throughout the city. So that's something I think you should take a close look at, particularly since it is here. We talk about high-level architectural design and strategy and so on. It really is a resource that is intended to help mitigate the risks associated with implementing any technology, ours or anybody else's. So up front, we can help think through the appropriate ways to implement it, the kinds of service and support mechanism you may want in place or you may want to outsource to others. And when you get into application design, gives us an opportunity to have some input as to how well our products and others from other suppliers would be best applied to solve the business problem that you're trying to address. Okay, let me talk then about some of the things that we're beginning to learn. And before I get into this, I'm going to share some case studies here. If there's any interest in follow-up information, any of these that I use in the slides, the sales team here can provide you more detail on. I will tell you, doing a lot of speaking for the company a few years ago, I decided that I would cease using data making the case for how well our stuff is valuable to customers if it came from Microsoft or any consultant we hired. That is to say, I will only use it if a customer has been kind enough to give us the privilege of using it publicly. So whatever is said here, it is what a customer said. And again, if any of it is something you'd like more follow-up on, in some cases there are multiple page documents to back that up. And really we do this as a way to just share what we're learning in hopes that maybe it can be applicable in your case. But when we look at some of the lessons we're learning, this slide represents a couple of key. I'm in danger always on occasion of appearing self-serving here, but I hope I'm able to back it up with enough data to suggest that independent of whether I were employed by Microsoft or not, I stand behind this. The first one is the issue of standards. And this is tied to the TCO problem, total cost of ownership, something that's important to any organization. And there are pieces, big ones, of the TCO problem that are the responsibility of the vendor to solve. That is, problems with products, lack of adequate tools, and so on. But frankly, there are pieces that are in the hands of the buyer, and one of them is this one. We have, in some cases, technical anarchy installed in organizations. Every department gets to choose their own, and everyone that chooses a different one. And suddenly you turn around one day and you're trying to tie together 13 electronic mail systems. Oh no, that really doesn't happen. The Texaco Corporation happily made a strong decision to move to Exchange across the board, and the CTO there, the Chief Technology Officer, Ed McDowell, was quoted as saying he paid for the whole thing just by the honest, no kidding, reduction in costs by eliminating 7 other mail systems that had grown up over the years. If we are going to truly see value on a large scale in organizations, we have to decide on certain infrastructure standards and, frankly, implement it. Now, in the end, if it's done properly, what we think happens is you will empower, if you choose the right standards, the end user to have all kinds of choice on what it looks and feels like at the user end, the kind of tools that you have. But to have multiple messaging systems in an infrastructure is financially irresponsible. And it's technically way too complicated. And almost independent of the vendor chosen, one is better than many in this case. And I frankly draw a parallel to it to a phone system. I personally don't get to choose the phone that I have in my office. Someone makes that decision because there needs to be one system in the company, not 37 of them. That's a key component, and more companies are moving in that direction, deciding on certain standards, multiple vendors, but fewer than before, but not one, but then implementing that standard throughout the organization. Commodity applications. Buy it off the shelf, if at all possible. We just went through an implementation for Microsoft. We're a big company. We got financial systems. We got order entry systems. We got a bunch of systems. We decided one is better. It meant we had to choose somebody. In this case, we chose SAP. And the whole company runs on that. And it runs on that everywhere in the world. And people don't get to choose. They use it or not. But they don't use it at their own risk. We're a $14.5 billion company, and every year 3 people personally review the business progress of every P&L in a company. That's hundreds of them. That's every country on earth we're doing business in. Steve Ballmer, our new president, Bob Herbold, our COO, or Bill Gates himself will personally review these twice a year. And we issue an edict in this company, and we tell the business manager what each slide will look like, what each bullet will be, what will be covered on that slide. It will be in the same place, in the same location for every presenter on Earth. And it better be there, he or she has a problem. And they're all coming off the same database, the same financial source, the same everything. All it varies is the actual data. What it lets you do is manage a company on a scale you could not do without that level of standardization and without that commitment to everybody complying with it. Now, beyond that, how you run the business, how you meet your goals, all that's a local decision. But when you want to look at the business across the board, you need a standard infrastructure and you need everybody committed to doing it the same way. Outsourced non-strategic support. We outsource 10% of a very large IT budget. We're a PC company. We have a PC to employee ratio that you probably don't want to emulate, but we're doing it because of the right reason, I think. But all that stuff is maintained, the help desk, the support, everything, by outsiders, because it's obscenely cheaper. It just makes more sense, and it's done that way around the world. There are many, many strategic IT support functions we don't outsource because we think that is our responsibility, but we try to look hardcore on only doing those things we have to build, sell, market, and support software. And everything we don't, we look to partners as opportunities to reduce cost and leverage that outside. Treat every employee and partner as a knowledge worker. Remember the knowledge worker terminology? What was a knowledge worker? I love some of the stuff our industry's invented. One of my favorites was EIS. Remember that one? Executive Information Systems. What in the devil were those things? And who was an executive? Does that mean if I didn't get one, I wasn't? I mean, all kinds of nonsense around that. Knowledge workers a beaut. Basically what we're saying, everybody in the organization is one, and if you truly do have partners, that means them too. You know what that causes you to do? At Microsoft, we have 30,000 employees. Everybody is on the messaging system. Everybody. And everybody can access everything. That means if my secretary would like to take a look at the financials for our business in Lima, Peru, and see how Microsoft Barney's doing down there in the retail outlets, she can do it. The normal hierarchy in companies say, well, no, information is power, and so I have to be a certain authority level to get access to that and the other. Why would you want to use that? We take the opposite view. Let's assume our people aren't brain dead. Most of them really want to do their job really well. So let's assume 99 times out of 100 they want that data for really good reasons. Let everybody have access to it on an equal basis. An infrastructure allows that to happen, but frankly the biggest problem in implementing in most companies and organizations is politics, bureaucracy, hierarchy, and inertia. You open this up and it allows you to run an organization in a very different way. The last bullet, and I'll share data to really back this one up, we all know the internet is real. But I will admit to you, I personally, and I bet many in Microsoft, had no earthly idea this thing was going to take off at the rate it has. I'll close my comments with some data that I think are relevant to thinking about how municipalities are going to generate revenue in the future. And it's a today problem, not a future one. Okay, a couple of quick examples. Once a year we hold a CEO conference in Microsoft. CEOs only. Last year, or this year in May, we had our second one. We had the chairman of the board of Boeing. We had the chairman of the board of Lloyd's Bank. We had the chairman of the board of major corporations around the world talking about how technology impacted business, what we were going to do about it. It wasn't our chance to do a product pitch. It was obviously our chairman hosting a group of his peers. And I've been in this IT business for over 30 years, and I will tell you, I never would have guessed we would have had a meeting of that level to chat about electronic mail. Honest to Pete, much less get him to use it. I mean, I remember just a few years ago doing a speech, and I had a very senior officer with me from another high-tech company I obviously won't mention, who stood up, wanted to tell the office how enthusiastic about electronic mail he was personally, and he used it to the greatest extent possible. In fact, every night at the end of work, he had his secretary print out every email message so he could take it home in his briefcase. Not exactly making the point we were trying to make here. Now, you've heard the Microsoft email story. If you have not been called on a Microsoft salesperson for a while, you need to do this because it's a lot of fun being on the receiving end, I'm sure. These are passionate, motivated, gung-ho people, or we fire them. And one of the things every Microsoft employee is passionate about is electronic mail. And it's all a true story, but sometimes I admit it gets a little out of hand. Most of them now will walk into customers, pound their chests, and exclaim with great pride that we at Microsoft send and receive, each of us, 200 electronic mail messages a day, minimum, as if you were supposed to be impressed or think they were crazy. It's actually gotten so out of hand, I think there are now employees in the company who don't actually send or receive that many, that are so embarrassed about it, they send themselves mail to make sure their mail count is high enough to be okay with their friends. But messaging is that important, seriously. And not only would I not have guessed that they would have had at this level this kind of discussion, to show you how far it's gone around business case, around messaging. The Boeing company is the largest implementation of Exchange on Earth. 220,000 users up, running in a production environment today. And as these CEOs were chatting about things, in the middle of that discussion, the chairman of the board of Boeing stands up, Phil Condit, and turns to his peers and says, I want you to know this is so important now to my organization. This is an aircraft manufacturing company. And said to this audience that if that thing goes down, it is more important to me than losing the dial tone on the phone. I guarantee you in the Boeing company, they have a different discussion around TCO and cost benefit around IT infrastructure than others, because that level's bought it to that extent. Next example is Reuters. Gosh, will these PC platforms be used in kind of mission-critical settings? I mean, really, they're going to, I don't know how this stuff is moving like that. But anyway, this silly company, Compaq, for Pete's sake, and PCs and stuff, and Microsoft, Word, and Excel, but you're going to bet the farm here? Mission-critical? Reuters basically sells information services to the investment banking and financial community around the world. They have over 50% market share. That application is mission critical to them because people can't get access to it. They stop collecting fees. That's important to them. Been running on Unix forever. Saw a demonstration of NT running on Compaq devices. After they saw it in a pilot, they went production. This is what they said, not me. It's a screenshot of the application. Moving from Unix to NT on Compaq meant a 300% improvement in performance at 1/2 the price. That's what this debate is about in this industry. Gap. Will e-commerce fly? Will people do business over the net? I mean, really? Their money will transfer electronically? What about security? When people get this passionate about something, I always fear that it must be because they are so happy with what they've got. Let's see, how does it work today? I call up an 800 number, or 900, and I want to buy something. Someone gets on the end of the phone. I never met him or her before in my life. They could be working on a special project to get themselves out of prison early, for all I know. And then I voluntarily give them my credit card number. Yeah, I'm really very comfortable with, I'm very fearful of where we're going here electronically. Look, trust me, that's going to get figured out. This is not a question of if, but when. The Gap, big retail operation, bet the whole farm on the web on Microsoft stuff, helped them put it up. It's barely 6 months old. You could, look at anything in their stores. You can pretend that you're different colors of shirts and blouses and pants and so on, and dress it the way you want, and order it and pay for it. And after 6 months of operation, they say they think they're going to sell more product through this environment than any store they have anywhere. This is going to happen, and it's already happening. Now let me talk about government for a minute. This is going to impact government at a level equal to the commercial sector, and in some ways I think the challenges could be even greater. We have a chance here, as most of you I'm sure have thought about, of doing a great job of cutting off a major portion of our society and just finishing the job, or bringing them into the mainstream at a level we could never have done before. And we're going to be judged in part in how well we do this, and I think it has some potential impact on our society as a whole. And government's got a core role to play here. In fact, Microsoft's efforts on the philanthropic side are very focused on the public schools and the library systems, trying to make a dent there. Many others in our industry are trying to help as well. But this is a real issue. It's going to impact how the citizenry relates to government. Now, unhappily, I hate to use this example, but I will, but I won't go into any detail. The current controversy in D.C., in fact, is being pointed out by many to be parallel with the Nixon-Kennedy debates and what it did to point out the role of television in our ability to communicate as a society. And the internet is obviously a great example of how quickly detailed information can be spread around quickly. But it is a very interesting point. We are changing how we communicate as a community, and the chances for government to have impact in a positive or negative way here are significant. Why do I need to go to a school on my own personal time to vote? Why can't I do it electronically? The last bullet I got there calls out a certain issue that's important to most governments, and that's tax collection. Now, I'll show you in a minute as I close some data on the internet phenomenon, but as it is today, you can buy cars over the internet, you can buy airplane seats, you can buy clothing, you can buy books, you can buy almost anything, and people are doing it. How do you tax all that? What's it matter where, as a buyer, I don't care where it is physically. How are you going to tax it? Where it's in a warehouse? Where I am? And what's happening here is this is happening at a faster rate than government normally can keep up. Policy making appropriately goes at a slower pace than certainly technology is revolving at this point. There's currently a moratorium on taxes on the internet, which I agree, to make sure the thing gets going, gets momentum. But boy, the potential for government getting behind the curve here, while technology blows away the relevance of certain policies, is significant. This is one of the things I think you ought to look to our industry for some help on. When I say partnering with Charlotte, that should mean that I'm willing to share some of the things I'm spending all that R&D money on to help you get a little ahead of the power curve, because I bet you don't have $3.2 billion to write in a check next year for R&D on technology. So the more I and our other partners in the industry can share with you about the realism as to where it's going or not, maybe we can work together to help government not only facilitate, take advantage of the technology to do what it's doing as a government, but also to stay ahead of some of these pieces of the revolution so it doesn't get caught off guard. A couple of examples. In Wisconsin, I think it's a great example of almost the beginnings of the use of the internet as it relates to that last bullet and relating to their various suppliers. In this case, it allows the suppliers to come in and get information and be able to bid on RFPs that go out for service support in a much more efficient way. The vendor community has been very positive about the efficiencies that are inherent in that. As well, there have been some standards made on messaging that they argue has enhanced the communication between themselves and within the government as well as externally. Here's an example I bet relates to you. I bet there are a lot of forms in the government in Charlotte. I bet there are a lot of forms in every government I know. Our CEO 2 or 3 years ago found out that it took, as gung-ho as we are, as PC nuts as we are, as technology-oriented as we are, he asked this crazy question in a random staff meeting and then got the data back that answered the question, how many forms does it take to run Microsoft? When he got the number 2,000, after he climbed down from the ceiling, we began a program. Don't even have near the time to go through that. One example. We have an application, if you haven't seen it yet, insist our Salesforce demo it for you. It's called MS Market. We built it for ourselves. Basically, it's the way any employee anywhere on earth purchases stuff at Microsoft. Direct links to the SAP system, direct links to make sure that people are checked on what level of authority they have, direct links to the vendor community, all kinds of staff efficiencies, many of those staff positions no longer needed. Dramatic reduction in cost. Every time we demo that application, most customers, senior management at least, relates to the same problem in their own org. Purchasing is purchasing is purchasing. Same in the government basically as the commercial sector. It's basic intranet technologies and interfaces with core systems dramatically changes how you work and reduce costs. The biggest challenge is the big upset it causes in business processes that have been in place forever. We demoed this at the CEO conference. Over half the attendees said, I want to buy one of those. You know what Microsoft does with that code? Every bit of software we write for our own internal use, we make available free to our customers. And we'll provide some consulting service to help you implement it in your own organization. The cost savings are awesome. Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, again, this is an enterprise cross-agency standardization on desktop. This is beginning to happen throughout the commercial sector and more now in state and local government because of the cost. Big cost advantages, common standards, particularly messaging and desktop. They use a lot of partners in this case, and we're doing a lot of work interfacing the state and local government there. Charlotte itself, certainly most of you are familiar with what we're doing there. I talked about the EPM that's on site. You've been kind enough as to give us the privilege of being a standard infrastructure player here. As it's rolled out throughout the government, we want to play a role. There are a couple of other things that I'll say as well. I meet with lots of customers, and every customer is important to us. I wouldn't imply anything else. But we have a unique opportunity here. As I think most of you know, we've become, we hope, a positive addition to the community locally. I think we have roughly 750 employees in Charlotte now. We think that number could exceed 2,000 by the year 2000. It's growing at that rate. I was taken to a little mini ribbon cutting myself earlier today to our new offices that we had just moved in a couple of months ago that were different from the last time I was here, and that's just dedicated to our on-site sales and consulting force. We have built a very large consulting division, and they're all physically located in North Carolina, serving North and South Carolina. Salesforce system engineers. I must admit I was a little concerned when the manager was briefing me on where I'd be going. He said, yeah, it's a new location, and we're really excited about being there, and it's an area referred to as the Hornet's Nest. And I was concerned that meant we were housed next to NetWare and Novell and Sun, but that wasn't true. Obviously, it's near the Coliseum. So as a company, we're making a reasonably significant commitment to the area, and I'll just throw this out as kind of a general opportunity. To some extent, we'd like to be abused. You're as a city trying to position yourself as leading edge in leveraging technology and drawing in high quality companies into the area. We'd like to be a great reference for that, and our intention is to continue to invest heavily here, and I hope that gives us an extra and even unique opportunity to partner with you as a very special customer. A couple of comments on the future. It is all focused on dramatic increases in performance for communications and processor speed, as I've already talked about. I mentioned this already. Andy believing, if anything, Moore's Law should be shortened. At the same time, just the speed of communication. If you ask me what the two impediments are to e-commerce today, it's bandwidth and security. That is a real issue, but the banks are working hard on it. We'll get that resolved. Bandwidth is really an infrastructure decision. It has to be made both within the United States and externally. Those two issues are going to get fixed. It's not a question of if, but when, and it's amazing to look at what's happening today. The internet phenomenon really is changing everything. You think about Microsoft, 65% of the revenues outside the United States. Very global economy. This data blows me away. Estimates are now, and this came from a major survey firm, that the growth in access to the internet in the United States is increasing at the rate of 50% every 90 days. 50% every 90 days. Why doesn't this work? I'm just probably overdone. All right. The implications I've talked enough about, I think, from a business and a government perspective. It is literally going to change the business models. The opportunities are phenomenal. And here's why I go back to the number of businesses doing business on the internet already. Take travel. What's travel today over the internet? This is basically a cheap seat in an airplane, a cheap rental car, and a cheap hotel room. That's it. That silly little business represents less than 1% of the travel business today. In 1997, the federal estimates were that was $480 million in revenue. They estimate it's $4.8 billion by 2000. That's 18 months away. You combine that with all the rest that's going on, like the Gap and the automobiles and the rest of it, the retail commerce market is moving to the electronics, and the people that it's impacting first are the affluent and the big ticket items, which are reasonably significant opportunities from a tax perspective, and we have barely scratched the surface. We think processor speeds continue. Flat screen technology, that big old bulky thing on your desk, makes no sense. We're talking about 14, 15-inch flat screens today retailing for $1,200. They're going to be $500 in 12 to 18 months. It's going to totally change the real estate issue on the top of your desk. Voice recognition, we think, is closer than many people believe. And yes, I mean the keyboard doesn't go away completely tomorrow, but for many applications it could. And a lot of them related to citizenry speaking to government and not needing a human being in the middle of it and getting the process done a hell of a lot quicker than it could be otherwise. Dramatic investments are being made in the insurance industry that are very applicable to both the federal and a local government application, areas we'd love to chat with you about. Our goal as a company is hopefully to stay focused on building the best platforms and tools we can to facilitate you as our customers' ability to take advantage of this phenomenon that we're all trying to live through. We thank you very much for the privilege you've given us to work with you to date, and thank you very much for being with us this afternoon.
As a father of 3 kids, one area of the internet I can tell you that is really exploding is Beanie Babies. If you want to buy a Beanie Baby for your kid, believe me, the best place to do it is you go to the internet and you can buy it anywhere in the world, and you'll pay the right price when you do it too. Our next speaker, we're very happy again. Bob represented Microsoft as our software provider. We have James Weynard from Compaq Computer. Again, Compaq is by far the de facto standard for enterprise computing servers. Founded in the early 80s, always has been known as the most reliable hardware provider, and we're very happy to have Jim here today. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to him.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to take you just through a few minutes of who Compaq is and what Compaq is doing with the city of North Carolina and in the public sector in general. Our customers have asked us to do several things for them. To be global in reach as the world moves from the local area network environment to the truly planetary scale of the internet. I'm not going to go back through all that you just saw, but that is a massive tidal wave and is truly affecting public sector today, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Enterprise focused, running the entire company in a cost-effective manner that is going to be viable 2 years from now, 3 years from now. At Compaq, we measure our tenure not in number of years. I've been with Compaq now for 9 quarters. That's how we measure our tenure, because our industry is moving at that pace. We absolutely have to stay ahead of the curve and ahead of where the competition's going and ahead of where our customers need to go. And being able to provide that, and being able to provide a solution that 18 months from now and 2 years from now, which is literally an eternity in this environment, that your investments are safe and protected. We understand that we need to be which one am I pushing backwards?
It's a hardware problem,
Uh-huh. Is this me here? Okay. There we go. Somebody who is strong public sector focus. One, you're on a different buying cycle. Your fiscal years are different than everybody else's. Your needs of the public servant are very different. You don't get to select who your customer set is. They select who you are. And you're being asked to provide services at a more efficient rate, more effectively, and in a location like Charlotte that is exploding exponentially. That customer base is growing, and we're well aware of the issues that the public servant is grasping and grappling with in order to meet those demands. Strong industry partnerships, that's why we're here today. We have bet our business on the Compaq platform tied together with Microsoft NT. And a number of our large enterprise customers in the public sector have done so as well. Our largest customer for Compaq worldwide is the U.S. Postal Service. The state of California today, literally last year, if you were in the Department of Franchise Tax Board, you could not send an email to the governor. Today, Compaq is installing hundreds of servers, migrating that customer, the state of California, over to an NT messaging system, Microsoft Exchange. So truly understanding what is important and how to deal with large enterprise customers is important. And understanding how to do those with a variety of partners and to do that in a cost-effective manner and one that will be viable in years to come is important. We're not a real old company. I think we're about the same age as Microsoft. We came on the scene in 1982. with the simple adage of we needed to come up with a product that simply worked better. Introduced the first industry standard PC. It was a portable, first industry standard portable, designed on the back of a placemat in a pancake house in Houston, Texas. That company today is the largest computer manufacturer in the world and will probably represent about $35 billion in sales with the acquisition of Digital and Tandem. Today we're focused on the entire enterprise with that acquisition. Tandem Computers we purchased about a year and a half ago. About 80% of the financial industry runs their stock market through a Tandem nonstop computing server. About 75% of 911 emergency telephone calls are placed through a Tandem server. If you're running your finances through an ATM machine, odds are pretty darn good it's running through a Tandem nonstop computing server. So we've started moving into that environment where you absolutely cannot withstand any downtime in your company's business. So what are we providing the customer today? Simplicity. What works in one department works in another department. What works for one company works for another company. Building dedicated infrastructure specifically for the city of Charlotte doesn't work anymore. Leveraging the research and development that Microsoft, that Compaq, and other industry leaders are putting into play, and also leveraging the successes in other public sector and private sector companies. So simplicity is off the shelf, not creating a unique and costly solution. Lowest risk, having something that's going to work. You push a button, you need it to work. Just yesterday, Compaq sold its 2 millionth server. That is more than all three of the next three competitors combined. What that means is we've done this 2 million times. The city of Charlotte is one of our beta customers. What this means to you is, and it really means more to us at Compaq, is that you get our servers for testing prior to the other 2 million that go out there. We want your feedback, your IT department's feedback, what's working, what's not working. And in exchange, your folks are getting a real good understanding of what's coming down the pipe 3-6 months, even further down the road. And we find that very important. So 2 million to go. With the acquisition of Digital and Tandem, we expect to hit the 3 million number here in the next few months. But let all that research and development of those 2 million servers go to work for you. Bring it to solution very quickly and use the expertise that's at hand. And we talked about the year 2000 issue. I know in the past politicians have had a hard time really wanting to deal with this issue. It's like filling potholes in streets. It's fixing a problem that's already there. It's not putting new roads out. And you guys here are all dealing with the I-485 issue. I'm sure you're well aware of how that process works. But what your IT department has done here is done two things at once. Migrating to a more cost-efficient, effective, NT-based system, at the same time handling the year 2000 issue, making sure that's not going to be an issue for the city of Charlotte moving forward. Just to the breadth of the product line goes all the way from that little blue box is really the handheld CEs that we spoke of earlier, ability to do mail and messaging on a very, very small device, and whatever that implies 3, 6, 9 months down the road, the future is limitless, is what that means. All the way up through the non-fault, non-stop computing computers and the digital alpha-based systems which are now Compaq. To close it off, we feel very comfortable with our relationship here in the city of Charlotte. We appreciate your business and look forward to a very, very strong and lasting relationship. Thank you very much.
Our next event is going to be a little interesting part in that we're going to show you some of the new infrastructure that's already in place. Again, some of you that are particularly in this building or at the CMUD campus know that we've had people here in the middle of the night rewiring and rebuilding the city, the infrastructure, the lines that you need to connect everything. Again, we've tried to do that, and one of the hardest part on doing a project of this size is to make the minimal impact on your day-to-day operations. And so far, the 12th floor, the 4th floor, the 15th floor in this building alone have all gone through that type of change already. And again, other than, anytime you deal with the ceiling in a building like this, you find things that you don't ever want to see again, such as all types of little particles that they tell you it's not asbestos, but it looks like asbestos, come down. That's been our biggest problem, has been getting those type of things, on the desktops. The wiring has been going superbly. And again, it's just like building a highway. You can't run fast over a dirt road full of potholes. That's what we're replacing the wiring with so that we can do the rest of this. What we're going to do next is do a little overview of the lab that, again, after the end of this presentation, you're welcome to come up to the 4th floor and physically see this. You're going to see a lot of advanced products there, including an advanced Compaq beta server. Something that we're helping them test to see. This is something that will go into the regular market channels over the next few months or after the testing is done. But the advantages to us is that it gives us input to them on how to better design these tools to let us run a citywide enterprise. And let me go ahead and ask one of our distinguished guests, the Mayor Pat McCrory, to come up and help us do this. We're going to invite him to do a virtual ribbon cutting, which is one of the newer.
I've been accused of being virtual.
Let me describe the scenario of how we're set up so that we can see how this works. And one thing that we're going to demonstrate is the use of a live video feed from the technology lab up in the 4th floor of this building. And we're actually, while it looks like it's a video camera not being broadcast through cable TV, but it's being actually broadcast through the city's network infrastructure, which again gives us another way to spread information across the city and make it available for people everywhere. With the technology, there's a little bit delay. If you remember when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, it doesn't always happen instantaneously, but I think what you'll get to see is how the two relate together. What we've got demonstrating up here is our electronic ribbon, which I'll ask one of you gentlemen to go ahead and...
Let me introduce, first of all, Nasif Majid from City Council, and I wanted to have him help me be a part of it. Thank you.
And we've got our electronic scissors.
All right. I'll do that. Nasif, you want to try this? Tell us what, you're going to tell us what to do?
Let's see. We're going to go ahead and cut those, and we'll push the button here.
All right. We'll see if you push that, and I'll do this. How's that?
This right here?
No, the other one.
All right.
Should I cut now?
When?
Okay, go ahead.
1, 2, 3. Go, Nasif. Nasif.
Might need to raise it up.
That's great.
Now we are switching to a live feed up to the 4th floor right now, and you're seeing people up in the lab. This is real time. Again, this is not a...
It is with great pride
that
the City of Charlotte opens its new Advanced Technology Lab today. The lab is operated by the Information Technology Division of Business Support Services. The lab contains several enterprise network servers and a variety of workstations. It can be arranged to represent the current configurations of the city, or with pre-released products provided by our technology partners to represent possible future configurations. Through our partnership agreements, IT will be performing advanced testing of hardware and software for Compaq and Microsoft. IT We'll also use the lab to test applications to determine their impact on the performance of the city's network. City departments can make appointments to try out hardware and software they are considering for purchase. City staff can come to open house at the lab on Friday afternoons to try out the proposed set of desktop software that will be installed as a part of the infrastructure rebuild.
All right, again, if I can give you a quick technical overview, what we're actually doing right now is that we're running this video presentation on an advanced release Compaq server, again, something that we're testing out with them to see the impact on technology. We're running Microsoft's net broadcasting products. Again, that one's not a beta product. It's something that a lot of the businesses that Bob showed you are basing their real work on. And again, this is not a TV broadcast. This is a broadcast through the network. And again, it's something that you're going to see more and more of in the future. Video on demand to the homes and things like this. This is something that we'll be able to do within the city and share meetings. Now, one thing nice about being at Charlotte is that while we're still all together, we are still spread out, but this gives us an advantage to have people meet and not drive across town if there's no advantage to it. And the way some of our traffic's going, it's better that we keep them where they are versus coming here. But again, please, you're welcome. We'll have Sue Johnson finish up after we're done here.
Let me just say a few comments. First, I'd like to welcome, on behalf of the City of Charlotte and Asif Majid, our council member Bob McDowell from Microsoft, who lives in Seattle. I just let him know that we're willing to offer him and Bill Gates. I think we found some land sites for them to move to here in Charlotte. We have found both commercial, industrial, and residential land sites for all three of you. Bill Gates has come to visit our city on at least 3 occasions that I know and has done some wonderful charity work, especially to our public libraries in this area. And one thing that impressed me so much about Microsoft and their involvement is they're constantly talking about the future. And that is something we need to do also here in the city of Charlotte. And it's just kind of interesting. I was talking to Bob and saying, Bill Gates is based my age. We're 1 year apart from each other. The only difference between Bill Gates and I are $50 billion. But we love to have Microsoft's investment here in Charlotte. But most thing I'm proud of is the Charlotte City employees who are really preparing the city for the 20th century. And not only are you helping communicate better among yourself in this city of now 2,350 square miles, but we're also hopefully going to end up improving our customer service, because that's the most important thing. And the thing I'm impressed about this program is that you have the ability to test the software first within before we test it on our customer. And I'd like to just thank you as city employees for preparing us for the next century. Thank you very much, and continue your great work.
All right, our final speaker is going to be Sue Johnson, the Key Business Executive of Business Support Services. And I think we'll advance from the show here. Again, this is true. You can do the internet snooping and watch your kids in daycare centers, or you can watch people in a technology lab.
I'm going to be hooking this up and watching out at equipment management, guys. Be careful. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming together with us today to look at the new future for the city. I know that we've been busy behind the scenes now for just a little over a year, and people have been saying, when are we going to see the results? Well, today, gang, you're seeing the results. The future is here. It's just going to get better from this point forward. And it couldn't have been done if we didn't have the cooperation of the fine people we have on staff, our contractors, and our partners. Our partners have been a big piece of this whole effort, and we just wouldn't be here without them. We, of course, never do anything in small doses in business support services. I think that's kind of the new hallmark that Guy and I have brought to this organization, along with my other division heads. We like to do it all at one time. So we're rebuilding the infrastructure, and we're tackling year 2000. Now, most organizations don't try to do both at one time, but, what the heck, no hill for climber, right? So we're going to take that hill, and we're going to win with that hill. In fact, tomorrow, as part of my continuing efforts to move the year 2000 message, I'll be going out and doing our first public speaking announcement about what the city's efforts are and trying to bring the community together in tackling the all-important millennial date that's coming. Now, This is great fun, but this is also available to you. So this is the sales pitch. You too can use the lab. You dial 336-5555 and ask for a reservationist for our lab. We want you to bring your software, your new hardware, your new ideas, bring it to the Advanced Technology Lab, see if it works, play with it, break it, fix it, and then take it out and install it and serve our customer, the citizen, at a much higher level we've ever been able to do before. That's what this laboratory is all about. Business Support Services Information Technology Division may have been the midwife for this, but this laboratory will grow customer service for all the key businesses within the city of Charlotte. So use it. It is your asset, not just mine. 336-5555. Got it? Okay, I expect to hear the phones ringing soon. So based on that, what I'd like to do is invite the rest of you to follow us up to the 4th floor. The lab will be open until about 4:30. There will be refreshments in another room. No drinking in the lab, folks. In another room next door. So you can sort of celebrate, join us, do a little socializing, but at the same time, touch the new technology. We have the new desktop in there. We have the beta server from Compaq. We have all the Microsoft suites and all their various pieces. Come and join us. Let's go into the 20th century team. Thank you very much.